Lake Maxinkuckee by C.W. Boylan. They stopped at Birdie's on the way out. It was just after 6 in the morning, the kind of hour meant for fishermen and farmers, and people that didn't want to make tough decisions this early in the morning. The diner lights were already on, warm and steady against the early gray. Inside, the air smelled like coffee and grease, and something sweet warming on the flat top. They slid into a booth without discussion. Menus were old and soft at the edges. Breakfast all day, eggs, bacon, toast, pancakes. They came with syrup whether you asked for it or not. Orders were made quickly, out of habit more than appetite. The coffee arrived almost immediately. Mike joked about getting to the lake before anyone else. Scott said that was the point. Tom drank coffee and listened to the low hum of conversation around them, the scrape of plates, the hiss of the grill. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows, but it didn't draw comment. Fog happened. They paid, left folded bills under the mugs, and stepped back out into the morning. The drive was quiet. The radio murmured something forgettable, while the fog slid past the headlights in slow sheets, thinning in places, gathering in others. Nothing unusual, just one of those mornings. By the time they reached the launch at Lake Maxinkuckee, the lake itself wasn't visible at all, only a flat, pale gray beyond the trees. They backed down the ramp slowly. Mike and Scott stood behind the truck, voices drifting forward as they guided Tom back. He leaned out the window, squinting, trying to judge the distance by sound and feel. "Little more," Mike called. "Easy." The trailer dipped, and the rear bumper slid into the water with a soft splash. "Hell," Tom muttered. Mike laughed. "It'll rinse." They loaded the gear without hurry. Mike stepped onto the boat, steadying himself as Tom and Scott handed rods, tackle boxes, and the cooler down to him. Once everything was on, Scott climbed aboard. Mike untied the line and Scott shoved off, and the boat slid free, vanishing into the fog almost immediately. Mike idled it away from the ramp and crept towards where the dock should have been. Tom drove the truck up the ramp and off to park. The sound of the engine faded quickly, swallowed by the gray. When he walked back, the dock wasn't where he expected it to be. He slowed, squinting, stepped forward, and plunged one boot straight into the lake. "Damn it," he hissed, hopping back as the cold water soaked his sock. He shook his foot once, annoyed. "Idiot." He leaned forward and felt with his toe of the boot this time. Wood. Tom stepped onto the dock and moved carefully, sliding his foot forward before trusting it. Inch by inch, the fog erased everything beyond a few feet. The water below made almost no sound. "Tom!" Mike called. A shape moved ahead. Mike stood in the boat, barely visible, arm raised over his head, waving. "Right here!" Tom muttered under his breath and continued until the boat finally took shape and stepped aboard and settled in. They eased away from the dock at a crawl. The shoreline disappeared almost immediately. Mike kept the throttle low, guiding them forward, while Tom watched the water slide past the hull, counting seconds in his head to reassure himself that they were moving. Scott leaned back, stretching. "Ground rules," Scott said. "Whoever ends the day with the fewest fish cleans everyone else's catches." Mike laughed. "You say that every time." "And every time I win." They continued forward, believed where the center of the lake would be, navigating by memory more than sight. The banks faded so completely that Tom had trouble recalling the direction they had been in. After a while, it felt like the lake had always been this way. Just gray. They cut the engine and let the boat drift. Lines were cast, lures splashed softly and vanished. Reels clicked. The boat rocked gently with small movements. It was quiet in the way fishing mornings often were. Time passed. Tom checked his watch again, then again later. The sun should have been higher by now, but the light never changed. The fog didn't thin. If anything, it seemed to be pressing closer, dulling sound and flattening distance. Mike went to the cooler and set it on the lip of the boat, flipping the latch and digging through ice packs. "Got one!" Tom shouted suddenly. "Net!" Mike yelled. Mike lunged forward with a net as Tom leaned into the rod, and the reel whining as something heavy fought back. The rod bent deep. Tom grinned, feet planted wide. Then the line snapped. The tension vanished. Tom swore and stared at the limp line before kneeling to retie it. Scott stepped closer, smirking. With luck like that, Tom, you're going to be cleaning everyone's fish today. He leaned casually against the side of the boat. The cooler tipped. For a moment it balanced and then slid clean over the edge. Ice, wraps, plastic bags splashed in the lake and then disappeared. Hey! Mike reached for it. Too late. Scott dropped to his knees, sweeping with his hands blindly through the water. He pulled back an empty hand. Damn it! Tom stood. Great. He looked around the boat, then out in the fog. We might as well head in for lunch, fix the line, eat, come back out. Mike nodded. Fog should have lightened by then. Scott shrugged. Fine, let's go in. Tom started the engine and eased them forward. They went on longer than Tom expected. No shoreline appeared. No darker shapes, nothing. Scott shifted. You sure you're heading the right way? Same way we came in, Tom said. We should have at least seen something by now. Another minute passed. Scott's voice sharpened. You're taking us in circles. I am not. Then something's wrong with the boat. Scott shoved past him and grabbed the wheel. Move. Tom hesitated, then stepped aside. Scott adjusted their heading and pushed the throttle higher. If we're circling, we'll hit our own wake. They never did. The fog thickened. Sound seemed to die completely. Even the water against the hull was barely audible. Scott finally cut the engine. They leaned over the side, checking the prop. Nothing tangled, nothing bent. Mike looked up. Hey! Above the fog, pale and distant, the moon hung high in the sky. That's not right, Tom said quietly. No one argued. Tom glanced down at the console. The fuel needle hovered just above empty. He searched the gray for shore and nothing. I don't know what's wrong, he said. I don't know which direction to go. Scott didn't answer. Mike didn't either. Tom rested his hand on the wheel. But it doesn't matter. The fuel's almost gone.